Welcome everybody to the Snowy Valley Council chambers in Tumut for the agenda for our February meeting. Just to be aware that this meeting is recorded and live streamed. For those not familiar with the council meeting procedure, we're required to adhere to the code of meeting practice in terms of following the agenda and maintaining the order of the meeting. I'd like to today acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to elders past and present. Do we have any apologies or leave?
General Manager.
The General Manager, Matt High. Any others? Someone move that. Thanks, Councillor Larter. Councillor Wright, all in favour? Carried, thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Number 3. I'd like to declare that I've got a declaration for 9.3, which is pecuniary interest, which relates to payment to the Mayor, and I'll be leaving the room. I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor for that. Any others?
Yes, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Benjamin.
I've got a pecuniary interest in 10.3, operational plan 6 months review. I'll be leaving the room for that.
Thank you. Public forum. We've got one item for the public forum. We've got the Brindabella Road upgrade, and we've got to address council. Yes, you ready to start? Yeah, certainly. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Stand at the front so you can be on camera.
Okay. All right. Well, I see.
Yeah.
Yes, we're grateful to have the opportunity, but we felt it was appropriate for us to respond to the report to the petition we put in that had over 1,000 signatures, and that petition is something we hope that council can use for its advocacy for the upgrades to the road. As you know, we've been working very hard, and we plan to continue to work very hard to lobby. We've got to the stage now where it's fantastic, because when we started, it really wasn't on the agenda. It'd been on lots of people's wish lists. But our aim is to continue as a group to work hard to support in any way we can, and to keep in touch with it, and to lobby at all levels. I know funding's going to be the issue in the end, and we want, when the road comes up, to people who count that they've heard of it. And I know that the Mayor's been very active in putting this up in front of people. So we hope it won't be a surprise when they ask for a hell of a lot of money. The only other point I'd like to raise on behalf of the group is that we are keen to have an input to the planning process. It was planned that we were going to be involved last November. We're going to do the engineering study, and then we're going to have it out for public consultation. So am I right in assuming probably now, with these reports being out, that they will be available for public comment and input? As yet we haven't had an input to the design. Some people have expressed some concerns that a 5 metre road is not appropriate. It's appropriate to a local road, but what we're talking about is a regional road. So we're really thinking future. I think we're thinking that we would like an input to the plans that have been developed so far, but to us they look very like a local solution, and we're thinking of the future. And the future we hope for this region will be for at least what I'd call a tourist road. But we want to be able to move our cattle in and out. We want to be able to do things, and we think probably the current road may need some modifications. But we have a meeting coming up, I think, with Hines, and we make input if we can to the plan. So to say, we're just expressing the hope that we'll be able to make an input. Some of us have been travelling over the road for 50 years. We have an intimate knowledge of its bad spots and where the accidents happen in particular, and we feel that would be useful to the planners. So we look forward to continued consultation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for coming today, and for your ongoing enthusiasm in the project. And certainly as a council, this new council, we're we're very much working towards making it a reality. It's the number one thing on our advocacy plan, and we'll continue to push it as hard as we can. And certainly there'll be an opportunity for consultation with you as well. Anyway, thank you for that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for bringing it on, this item. Would it be rude if we were to leave now?
These are very exciting
it's
things.
not at all rude, but what we will do is we'll bring the report forward, but yes, it's not necessary for you to stay.
Yeah. Are you doing the tabling of these reports now with this item?
Yes, we'll go through the minutes first.
Well,
and then
we'll
yeah.
wait for that.
Yeah. Any councillors have any questions for the Rendavilla Group?
No, I think we'll bring that.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll move on to the confirmation of the previous minutes of the 11th of December 2018. Someone move those minutes. Councillor Ham, Councillor Benjamin. All in favour? Anything arising from those?
10.6, the blue-green algae.
Yes, Councillor Lada.
I was just wondering whether it might be possible for a director to give us some advice on ultrasound technology. During the week I overheard one of the engineering staff from the Wagga Council being interviewed on the ABC radio about the success they're having with ultrasound in the lake over there, so Lake Albert. So it'd be interesting to see whether that technology could be adopted.
Okay. Director?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly ultrasound along with aeration is being considered as possible mitigation strategies for Manus Lake, and we expect that we'll get some recommendations and options from the UTS study that's currently underway.
Thank you. Okay. Anything further from those minutes? Okay, we've got a move in a second for those. Yep. Put the motion. All in favour? Carries. Thank you. Minutes of the extraordinary meeting, 17th of January 2019. Councillor Smith. Councillor Isselman. Anything arising from those? Put the motion. All in favour? Carried.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. There's one question about the forum to do with climate change. Is that where we're at?
Yes, that's where we're at.
Is there any progress on the forum being
I'll hand over to the Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're planning for a mid to late March forum. We're just discussing with some academics who can be part of that, the body of knowledge to introduce you to that conversation, and from there we will we'll kick off a risk management review of the risk reports around climate change to achieve that resolution of council.
Thank you. Councillor Lada.
I circulated an email earlier today about the Katoomba, I think it was Katoomba Council, that obviously ran a similar forum in consultation with the Rural Fire Service and the devastation that can be caused by a significant fire event. I'm just wondering whether it might be worthwhile seeing what the outcomes were from that meeting, so we can use that information rather than reinventing the wheel, and maybe invite some of those key stakeholders to our forum.
Yes, absolutely. I've had a look at that event that's taken place only recently, and there's a prominent academic who was there, and I've given instructions to our team to reach out to that academic as well, and some of the stakeholders who are involved in that conference. Absolutely agree, so we'll take that on notice.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, a big compliment to Director and his team to have this particular forum being brought forward so quickly and so efficiently. It was only last December that we started talking about this, so it's really nice to have something coming at us like this. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The target date, we haven't said anything in stone yet.
Not yet.
But we will hold you to that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, could I also bring up something from the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. The conference that you went to, the Snowy Regional Construction Development Conference, sounded very interesting. I noticed that Jane...
Councillor Ham, that's 9.1. We're not onto that yet. If we could,
well, then we don't need to talk about it yet.
yeah, we'll come to that.
Sorry.
But what I would like to do is, given that there's no correspondence, notice of motions of rescission or mayoral minutes, I'd like somebody to move that we bring forward the late report. Councillor Ham, thank you. Councillor Benjamin, all in favour? Okay. Which brings us on to the late report on the petition and Brindabella Road upgrade.
I just move that we move into committee on this. I think there'll be significant sort of debate on it. So,
Second.
Councillor Larder, Councillor Disselman, all in favour? Councillor Larder.
I commend the report and the petition, and it's something that's 100 years overdue, obviously. So we've spoken about it. There's obviously some structure here now to go forward, in addition to all the previous workup that's been done, and you know, the council has to be congratulated for leading the charge on this. But now's the time to capitalise on the political landscape, and you know, we've got an upcoming federal election, we've got an upcoming state election, and this has obviously been one of the significant items on our advocacy plan. We've now got some detail and some structure in there that will hopefully allow one of those government bodies to put their hand in their pocket and fund this road as a item of national significance, given the fact that Snowy Hydro is moving forward. It'll open up 20 plus council areas to our region and to Canberra, and provide you know, expertise that is unseen, and be an economic driver for the future development of not only this town, but you know, probably 20 other regional council areas, you know, as far as Hay and the like. So it's definitely important. We need to get the politicians moving forward in the next month or two to look at funding this, and you know, we can partner with them to build it with our expertise behind the scenes, and you know, under the you know, I'm sure that we can do a lot of the works and a lot of the lead up works to get it to a point where it's ready to go.
So the underlying theme of what you just said was that we target Snowy Hydro legacy funds.
I'd say so. That's the obvious place for us to look at funding this. It's a significant project. It's going to cost a fair bit of money, and you know, that's the obvious place for the Snowy Hydro to have a legacy, and to not only leave a legacy, but to partner with the future success of Snowy Hydro. You know, I think it's symbiotic. You know, it's just a great story, isn't it? You know, they can use the funds that have they've gained from the sale of this to contribute to the future growth and economic viability and social welfare of hundreds of thousands of people in this region.
Thank you. That's your 5 minutes.
Mr. Mayor.
For the whole council meeting?
Councillor Isselman.
Mr. Mayor, I'm noting the 5 recommendations that are here from this report, that there's no recommendation about continuing to aggressively source funding for the future development of the Brindabella Road upgrade. So I'd certainly like to put at point 6 something that would incorporate seeking funding from the legacy from Snowy and also from other sources. The wording isn't with me right now. I'm happy to have someone provide me with some wording if they could. But I just think it's really important for us to recognise that we're not going to necessarily get the biggest bucket of money all at once, and the most important thing is that the upgrade of the road is a continual stage and it keeps progressing forward. I take on board the idea that it needs to be a tourist link to allow major traffic on it, but at the same time, if the first thing we can get is a tarred road and a linkage road that's capable of taking an ordinary sedan, it's a high profile difference to what it is and has been over the last 100 years. So I just think sourcing funding, and making some mention in this particular recommendation about sourcing of funding is really important.
Thank you. Director Harvey's working on some words now.
Thank you very much, Director Harvey. If you could give me some instruction on that, I would really appreciate it.
So we've started to draft that up, and what we would put in there is that council immediately contacts state and federal government and opposition leaders to seek commitment for the upcoming elections to fund completion of the Brindabella Road upgrade. Does that capture what you were wanting to say?
That certainly captures what I want to say.
Doesn't necessarily mention the legacy, the Snowy's legacy.
To specify that and other funding
and
as
other
well?
funding,
Okay,
please.
Okay. Could be including utilising legacy funds, Snowy Hydro legacy funds, or other options. Other comments while that's being typed up?
I'd just like to speak in agreement with Councillor Lato about the importance of this, and thank you very much to the Brindabella Group for coming along and speaking today. I'd like to invite the Cross-Border Commissioner, James McTavish, to come along and be driven along there, whether it's by council or by the lobby group, because he works interstates, and I know he's never been down it, and I think it's pretty important that the Commissioner really does understand how the ACT and the Snowy Valleys Council joins together. Yeah, and then I agree that it should. I actually think this is our time to lobby hard for the whole lot to be done because of the Snorri Legacy Fund, and it will cost a lot of money, but it will create over 300 jobs. I mean, it's a win-win.
I think the thing is, there's overwhelming support for this. You know, the Mayor and I sat with the Chief Minister for Canberra, and he was fully in support of this.
Yeah.
So we need to capitalise on that that goodwill and that movement to actually get this built.
There's no better time than now.
We could possibly consider calling it the Snowy Hydro Road.
I'm sure. Hudson Way or something. Thank you very much. We right to move out of committee? Councillor Ryder, Councillor Cross, on the books. Thank you. All in favour? Okay. So we now have 6 recommendations. That was moved by Councillor Lato in the first instance, was it? No, it was moved. No, they're not moved by anybody.
They're not moved yet.
So someone would like to move them? Councillor Isselman, Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Isselman.
Don't need to speak, but thank you very much.
Can I add a 7th one of inviting the Cross-Border Commissioner to come to Snowy Valleys Council?
Yes, we could. We spoke about that. If Councillor Isselman's in favour of that.
Yes, certainly. So number 7?
The Cross-Border Commissioner be invited. To travel the road
and further discuss the
and
project.
further discuss the opportunities.
Should we just expand on that and say invite the Cross-Border Commissioner and
Candidates?
and politicians?
Yeah.
You know, relevant politicians.
Who decides whether they're relevant?
The electorate.
Thank you. Councillor Isselman, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second then? Councillor?
Yeah.
Thank you. No further discussion? Put the motions. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, and thank you to our visitors. Which brings us back, Councillor Ham, to the Snowy Ridge Construction Development Conference 14th to 15th of November 2018.
I just heard feedback about how well you spoke about the whole council area, and thank you very much. The feedback was excellent.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much. It's certainly not what I was expecting. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I'd like to have it to be noted that I attended that conference also, and also thought it was an excellent conference, and really enjoyed your presentation there. And all up, it was a very, very good conference. I believe it is going to be helpful for future direction for the region.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, and we'll make sure that your name is added to that.
I note, if I could, Mr Mayor, that potentially there were some speakers there that could be very helpful for the forum on climate change as well, because there was a lot of presentations about solar energy and recyclable energy and such like, which could be very, very valuable to us in council area.
Yes, I'd agree with that, and also on rail as well.
Absolutely.
And I thank you so much for this report.
Rail, Charles?
No, rail.
Rail.
Rail, that's what I mean. I thank you for this report. It's very comprehensive, and I believe this is the abridged version. So there's a more comprehensive one there.
More comprehensive version. And I might also mention, if I may, Mr Mayor, obviously that conference was held by Snowy Monero Council in relation to the impact of Snow 2.0 on the region. I'm just wondering if in a later point we might consider a similar conference in our Snowy Valleys Council to present the same case and the same presentation for the impacts and the opportunities for contractors and people who are involved in 2.0, given that the majority of 2.0 is on Snowy Valleys Council's land.
I would agree with you in that the engine room of Snowy Hydro is in this council area. Certainly the generation capacity is nearly all in this council area. I think that this conference was actually organised by a third-party organisation.
It was, but it was contracted through Snow.
Yeah, so but certainly, yeah, I think there's an opportunity there for us.
Yes.
In the future. Yep, exactly.
Could I just add something? The Snowy Hydro Transgrid have just released where the power lines are going to go from the new down, and so it's going to be on the corner there in the Elliott Way, coming up from Tumbarumba on the Tumut Road. I'd just really like to know what that means, whose land it is, you know, who's that affecting, if we could have...
Mostly forestry land, I think.
Is it? Yeah. So if we could just have a bit more information about how that new hub is going to, where's it going to look? I mean, that's becoming part of a tourist destination at the moment. Yeah, we just need to know what's happening.
I'm sure we'll be involved in that.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we need to be.
Yeah.
So moved and seconded.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. So it's not moved and seconded? No. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross. Any further discussion? Motion, all in favour? Okay, thank you. And the PowerPoint that was presented is there as well for a little bit out of date now.
There's a child's face I think I recognise there, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. 9.2 Advocacy Plan Amendment, inclusion of the Future Fund. Now this actually came out of that conference where one of the things I presented was the possibility of a future fund from Snowy Hydro Legacy Funds once again. When we did the original advocacy plan, it wasn't completed. But this is just the inclusion of it in that advocacy plan. So an amendment to that.
Might I comment, please, Mr Mayor? In the experience we had at the Cooma Council, and you presented the Future Fund, it was incredibly well received by the majority of people in the room at the time, and I think, as I remember, it was received by a loud applause. So I think it's something that's got great potential and certainly worthwhile putting forward, and I congratulate you on your future thinking.
Thank you.
So would you like to just explain again exactly what it is, just anyone who's watching this?
Well, there's two parts to it, but the first one is to quarantine $600 million from the as a corpus from the Snowy Hydro Legacy Fund of the 4.2. Put that aside so that it's drawn upon and the interest is used for the communities of the Snowy Monero Council area and the Snowy Valleys Council area. in addition to that, I've also asked for like a royalty to be paid of so many cents per megawatt produced to once again go into that fund. So that's like a royalty, as wind farms have, gas fields have, as the North Sea oil fields, coal mines. So that's what I'm asking for as well. So I think it's just it shows a bit more vision, shows a bit more responsibility, and a belief in our future rather than spending it all at once. That's my vision.
And Mr. Mayor, I think it actually shows that we're a very proactive council, that we can, that we've got an innovative approach, that we are forward thinking and forward planning, because this will now allow us to be much more sustainable. It will also allow us to be able to provide our community with the infrastructure and the services that they want. So I think it's a great initiative.
That's right. Snowy Hydro's left us with a great legacy over the years, and this will allow that legacy to continue.
So have you had any feedback on it? I mean, we all think it's great.
Yeah. Look, I have, and I've done some radio interviews on it, and recently one with Southeast New South Wales as well as Riverina. The take-up of the idea by politicians has been not quite as enthusiastic as I would have liked, but I'm still out there advocating it.
Do you have any particular kind of projects in mind that the funding would be used for?
Not at this stage, no. But it could be social, it could be infrastructure, it could be all sorts of things. I'm sure once you
climate change.
Yeah, once you get it signed off, then you can look at that.
We've got 10 of them in the list.
Yeah, there's 10.
But too, it enables us to be a much more independent of grants. So we're actually becoming more
sustainable.
Yes,
self-sufficient.
So I think it's great.
It's like a self-managed superannuation fund.
Yeah.
Anything further? Do I have a move and a seconder for the Councillor Cross and Councillor Smith? Any further discussion? Yeah.
Can I just say too that, now's the time to be putting these politicians on notice that, we want some delivery on this stuff, like we don't want Mike Kelly promising the world over in Queanbeyan.
But this is a state issue.
State and federal.
We need this signed off in the next month. Which comes up to this issue and also the Brindabella Road issue. If there's a forum coming to town, we need to be asking the candidates how they feel on these things.
Yep.
Well, and we need some real commitment from them, not just, we'll go back to the party or...
Yeah. Certainly the Future Fund is mostly state, but a little bit of pressure from the feds wouldn't hurt. But other things in the advocacy plan are both state and federal.
I mean, the social infrastructure here, like, it's behind the times,
It is. It's not fit for purpose anymore.
It's not. It's horrible. I mean, they've been asking for sporting stuff, they've been asking for pools, they've been asking for forever and a day, and we just get nothing.
Well, the other thing too about climate change is that people will want to be able to play sport indoors, not outdoors, because it'll be too hot. So we haven't got that facility currently. So we really need to be forward planning how that climate change will impact on us, on the way we do things.
I'm mindful that we haven't moved into committee, but you're closing the argument, Councillor Hand?
Yes, I will close the argument.
Have you finished?
Yes, I have finished.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Thanks so much. This is 9.3. I'll hand over to Councillor Larter. Thank you.
All right, 9.3, payment of expenses and provisions facilities for the Mayor and Councillors policy. Do we have a mover and a second? Councillor Smith, Councillor Cross.
Can I move to committee, please?
Can we move to committee? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Benjamin. All those in favour?
First question I have, please, Mr Deputy Mayor, is I note in the report that it says that there was a variety of options for a provision of mayoral vehicles. Do you know what those options were and how they compare to the lease back option that we are proposing?
I'll refer to the acting general manager.
Yes, through the chair, if I may. There are a number of different options that were considered in terms of the mayoral ability to travel, and obviously there's capability to claim back kilometre reimbursement. There are council vehicles that can be used for travel purposes, which is a little bit of a cumbersome process, I've got to say, sometimes, as most people would know, depending on where you live and where you pick the vehicle up and return it, etc. And thirdly, there was the option of providing a vehicle for mayor to travel. And to just expand a little bit on that, we weighed up a number of different factors in all of that. Factors around reimbursement costs, factors around the actual leaseback cost for that vehicle, and kilometres travelled, and what in fact happened in other surrounding councils as well. And other councils do provide mayoral vehicle. We are now a member of the Canberra Joint Organisation of Councils. The travel requirement commitment from councillors and mayor, deputy mayor, general manager have increased substantially. There's a lot of travel to Canberra, there's a lot of travel to Sydney, to Wagga, etc. So in weighing up all of that, putting all of those facts and figures together, the option of leaseback arrangement for a car was the preferred way to go.
And financially, can you explain what difference there will be?
Yes.
Like on an annual basis, because I presume that the mayor at the moment is claiming quite a lot in mileage.
Yes, so it runs to around about $1,000 a month,
right,
as a reimbursement for using his own personal vehicle. If we look at the cost of providing a leaseback car, which includes contribution from the mayor,
right,
as well as it does with all of our vehicles when they're allocated, it actually breaks even pretty well. In fact, it could even be perhaps a little less expensive to provide the mayor with a vehicle.
Sounds like a very sensible financial outcome to me.
And I've pointed out on a number of occasions that now that Snowy Valley Council is such a large area of council, and also so much bigger as a council body in the New South Wales local government situation,
Yeah.
and recognised by Canberra JO as somebody to be speaking with, our position as a Snowy Valley Council is much higher in the status of things, if you like, and I think it's only reasonable for our mayor to have a vehicle that he can use at will and as he requires to be travelling these enormous distances and going to these incredible number of responsibilities, and not the least of which many of them have been created by the merger, so that there are many more things that he has to attend to, or if she becomes a she.
Yes.
So our mayoral position is something that we really respected and recognised for the importance that it holds now in reference to our local council.
and I'd like to, sorry, I'd like to say on that too, it is a kilometre thing, and if it is a kilometre thing, and, you know, when we get a council from Camp Urban or Utility, which I hope we do, they're going to be up over $1,000 a month just getting up to tune and putting here too. So I think this is something that should be considered for councils as well. That is, if it does work out to be financially more better for the council. Okay.
I think it's too. It's a recognition of the fact that our mayor now it's pretty much a full-time job, and that he does a lot of travelling to lots of meetings at all times of the day and night. So it is, as you say, Margaret, it's respecting his role and recognising that it is at times extremely busy.
Can I just add to, I think anyone in the community that wants to find fault with this is just, crackers. Because at the end of the day, the mayor if we're expecting them to fulfil the role that the community expects and that we expect as a board or a governance organisation, you just can't do that without having these sort of items. And I mean, this is going to provide benefit to us in so much as it's financially better off from a financial point of view, but in recognition of the hours and hours of work that the mayor and the councillors put in. And when you look at the remuneration that's available to councillors and mayors, it's disgusting, really, for what you do. Not that anyone comes into it, for the, because of it. But at the end of the day, I've done what he's doing, and I know that it's a nightmare. You're at the beck and call of everyone. And
that
you have
was in
to
a
be
small shire.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
So, I mean, you could not do, in my opinion, the level of job that James is doing without that commitment from the individual, but, without not
You
being
certainly couldn't be
employed
full-time
full-time.
employed to do
So
that
it's
position now.
what he does is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So the other
It's
thing I
almost
just
7 days a
thought
week.
is efficiencies to council employees as well, because not having to judge council vehicles to get the mayor to have the right car to go to a certain spot has to be time consuming within the administration of the council, and so that's an efficiency that we're looking at, which is determinable as financial as well.
And that's one of the things that we're supposed to be, is sustainable and looking at efficiencies. So,
Can I make another comment in light of these comments, that the vehicle that's provided should in fact be of a good standard and quality to reflect his position and to reflect the need of the vehicle to travel in all kinds of weather conditions and terrain and functions, different type of things that he would be required to do, that the vehicle should reflect all of those needs.
Well, because of our excellent buy local policy, Councillor Smith, it will be a Toyota from the local Toyota dealer. So, once again, there's benefit because we're supporting local business. We're providing, that the economic opportunity locally, and
the motion be put?
makes sense.
Move out of committee.
Right, Councillor.
Sorry, just before we move out of committee, I do want to comment on that this is additional training for councillors as part of this policy, and my appreciation for that, because what it was just didn't measure up. We can only be as good as our training.
Well, Councillor Pritchard's moved that we move out of committee and put the
Seconded.
motion. Seconded by Councillor Isman. All in favour? It's carried.
I'll move the motion.
All those in favour? Against? All right, it's unanimous. It's carried. You make later? I'll hand the chair back over to the mayor and advise him that the three resolutions were moved unanimously.
Thank you, Councillor Larder. Councillors, takes us to 9.4. Decisions on the administration of September 2020 elections. We're all looking forward to that. 3 recommendations there. Do I have a move in a second? Councillor Smith, Councillor Cross. Discussion?
I think it's the most sensible option. They're experienced in doing it, so why would we want to fiddle around trying to find somebody else that does it?
Beyond
Probably
the
more expensive as well.
Thank you. Nothing further?
Just a question, are we leaving point 3 in, that a constitutional referendum arrangement be entered into by the contract with the electorate? If we want to do polls or referendums, are we leaving that one in, or shall we take it out?
Well, it depends. We don't know what the referendum may be.
No, that's right.
So I think
We'll leave it open and let it go.
Well, that's how democracy works. I
It
think,
is,
yeah.
certainly is how.
Thank you.
You used that word, didn't you?
Shall we leave it in?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I'll put them up, all three, all in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Governance and financial report, Snowy Valley's Information Guide, 9.5. Councillor Ham, Councillor Benjamin, 1 and 2.
I think this guide is fantastic, and it breaks down a lot of things, and as a councillor I really appreciate the clarity in which it shows how the council works. It does bring to mind the marketing plan that's coming up, because the way it's set out, I'd really like it to be within the whole new marketing, which brings me to the question of how that is going, and are we going to see our new marketing branding coming soon?
Through Mr. Mayor, I can answer that question.
Thank you.
The branding strategy is completed in draft, being reviewed at the moment by council officers. It will be tabled at the March council meeting for with a recommendation for adoption.
Thank you.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, if I could, there's two things I'd like to bring up. First of all, on page 3, structure and function of the council, the map that's there shows our townships and
this is in the attachment.
In the attachment, the actual document itself. I'd like to have somewhere in the actual document recognising the smaller regional areas like Brungle and Albago and Glenroy and all the other smaller communities that we have, because they do have a substantial meaning to our council, and it would be certainly informative in this particular arrangement. And the second thing is the structural arrangement that's shown in this, I think, needs to be updated on page 90, is it? On 9.5?
Yes, 90.
Just a question, I just ask that we look at that structural arrangement that's there and make sure it's up to date.
That's possible?
That is, through the chair, yes. We've updated our structure since that was popped in there, so we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Nothing further?
I do note that. I note that it was sent back to the commissioner to look at, and that they came back with a number of things that hadn't been done. Have they been included now?
Yes, they have. I can advise you they have.
Thank you. Put the motion, all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. 9.6 Statement of Investments. We have two of these reports, Councillor Ham and Councillor Larder. Councillor Ham.
I'd just like to bring up, just with the Treasury Corporation investments, they seem to have gone down a little bit, and just wondering if I could ask a question what's happening.
Through the chair, if we can just invite Sarah to our Chief Finance Officer to join the table. Thanks, Sarah.
Welcome, Sarah.
Through the chair, the Treasury Corporation investments are based on property investments. The long-term investment at the bottom, the 4 million, which has gone down significantly in December. We're monitoring them each month as we go. They have produced a higher rate of return than other term deposits since we've used TCOR. So we're just monitoring to make sure that it does go back to a...
Do you know how, so say that $4 million one, how long is that term deposit for?
It's just an ongoing, it's at call. We
at
can
call.
take it out anytime we like.
Right.
But it's a long-term investment. We like to keep that there for 5 to 7 years to get a better rate of return. Yep.
And are we legislated to use Treasury?
Yes. It came in back in 2017. I think we changed our policy so that we would invest in TCOR.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, and I think you'll note it goes up another 1% for next month. Thank you. Nothing further? All in favour? Carried. Statements for January. Mover. Larder. Councillor Larder. Councillor Wright. Anything to note there, Councillor Larder?
No.
Put the motion, all in favour? Carried. Moving on. Quarterly budget review. Councillor Benjamin. Councillor Wright.
It just looks good.
Well,
Councillor
it looks particularly good, doesn't it? Because we've got a big grant coming through in December.
Through the chair, yes, we've recognised the additional $5.9 million in the NCF and Stronger Community Infrastructure Funds that were received just before Christmas. Yeah.
It always looks like this, eh?
Everything else is tracking well. We just need to monitor it as we go.
And just that little bit about Go Cup Road, it's running behind schedule. I know a lot of people are really sick of the traffic lights. Just wondering when the Go Cup Road is estimated in finishing, and then I think it's holding something else back as well. So if we could explain what that's all about.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding of the works currently happening on Go Cup Road, which is RMS and Ertec, they're delayed by several months. And then that's obviously the knock-on for that is that's delayed works on the next stage, which council was engaged in. So yeah, I suppose in response to your question, several months away yet before we'll see the traffic lights.
So if we were engaged in something, were we budgeting on that money?
We had given consideration to it in our budget, yes, and that is likely to change.
Right, because we have to reapply in the next financial year.
And we'll have a look at that. We'll have more information on that at the next quarterly budget review.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will there be, so, Mr Mayor, through you, will there be any impact on the water reserves following the issue with Tumbarumba's water clarity at the moment?
I'll refer that through to the...
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Is that in reference to the boil water alert that's currently in Tumbarumba? That's due to an equipment failure at our water treatment plant. Crews are very busily trying to get that sorted. I don't expect it will have an impact on our water reserve at this stage. Very busily trying to get that sorted and get that back on track.
Wish you all the well.
Yeah, obviously.
Is that covered by insurance, or we just finding the maintenance?
It'll be just our maintenance at this stage. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Love.
Just in light of the report on the Go Cup Road, can I maybe put forward a recommendation that the Mayor write to Minister Pavey prior to the state election and ask that funding of the $5 million for works be guaranteed in the new financial year, so that there's some surety for us going into that financial period.
Thoughts?
I think it's a great idea.
Do you want to add that as point 3, the recommendation?
Yep.
Move and second to happening of that?
Is it possible? Can that happen?
Possible to write a letter. Yeah.
Some would question that of council.
Or whoever. Minister Pavey or whoever.
Write a letter to Minister Pavey
Quickly.
requesting
Very, very quickly.
the $5
They're going to
million
caretaker from the first.
allocated to, what was it called?
I think if you just refer to the next stage of
Go Cup. To the next stage, Go Cup Road. Be guaranteed. Full stop. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Nothing further? 3.
Perhaps, Mr Mayor, just for the accuracy, council writes to Minister Pavey and then we put his title in. Not her, sorry. Victoria.
We'll add that.
Thank you, Director. Nothing else? Thanks for
That's
that.
2.
Put the motion all in favour. Carried. Moving on. Thank you. Which brings us to 9.9, governance and financial reports. I was particularly pleased to see the word finalised against some of these, which is good. I look forward to more of them being finalised.
Good report.
So it's, thank you for this.
Just a question then, Mr Mayor, on the signage replacement around local government areas. I think there's quite a few that we've missed.
I think that'll be an ongoing project.
Pioneer Main Street or Tube that way wouldn't seem to be something you could be missed.
And are we waiting for the marketing for those bit of signage as well? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Councillor Risselman, one of those, the CBD development of Batlow will take into that. I would imagine that problem. Director Stone?
Mr Mayor, there's two parts to the signage. One is the completion of township entranceway signage, which is still ongoing. There's a few to be done. There will also be a development of incorporating the new brand when it's released. Some further signage plans and designs that will be delivered prior to delivering further signage. It's all intended to be delivered by the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
So the water fountain that's been introduced to Batlow has been to other small towns in the middle of town, has still got Tumut County on. Surely we're not going to take that away for our update of our street.
That's purely operational, Councillor.
So I shall realise that. Just raising the point.
Councillor Benjamin.
Can I just ask, Mr Mayor, if the signage, the amount that we've got for the signage will actually replace the lighting on the signs of the entrances to each town? Because they don't actually work.
I'm not sure whether some of that lighting might have been paid for by a philanthropic organisation, or some of those signs might have been, or whether they were council aid. I'm not sure.
Okay. Can we get maybe?
But certainly we can find out.
If we can, that'd be
great.
great.
Take that on notice.
Thank you.
Councillor Lara.
Just for accuracy, just so that public aren't misreading what's in there, just maybe, a K or something could be put at some of these dollar figures, because some of them look like $350, not 350,000.
Yeah, it's just up the top. It's got it. But, yeah. Okay, given that we haven't gone into committee,
Move to committee.
Would you like to?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Lara. All in favour? All right. Go your hearts, Councillor Wilson.
Oh no, it's up to you now, Mr Mayor. I've had my say before. I think we can both go out of committee now.
Well, just before we
yes,
Mr Mayor, didn't we suggest that some of the project names, if you look at some of the project names, they're not actually accurate anymore? They need to go back to what was the original detail in the so
back to what was in the original.
Yeah. So things like the
recommendation.
Adlon Creekscape, I think is not the true
That's
name. So maybe that needs to be.
I think we're onto that.
And maybe just informing the public that these projects are obviously very important, but there is time frame put in place which are basically restrictive from the state government in terms of getting this funding. So it's probably important to let the public know that we've had a number of significant council meetings about how we're going to deliver these projects in the time frame to get the resourcing and the funding to make it all happen. So in light of that, there may be some decline in some of the other services to be able to meet this to get these projects over the line. So we just need to if something's not happening and something's in our delivery plan or whatever the case may be, and people are a bit sceptical that we're up to no good, or there's a lot of funny things happen. So we're just letting you know that we're trying to get these projects across the line and delivered so that we can provide the benefit to the community.
And just in case some of those funny things that happen, confirming Batlow Library funding is not included in this same level of funding, so it's a different grant altogether. And when you look at the Brindabella Road future plan completed, and it's $60,000 under budget. What do we do with that $60,000 when it's not being used within the budget? Do we hand it back, or do we redeploy it?
No, we can use unders and overs, so it can go somewhere else, or it can be reallocated.
Lovely.
So that's a good thing. I think the other thing is that some people had their expectations were a little bit elevated on what was originally asked for, and I think as Councillor Cross said, we've got to go back to what the original ask was and deliver that first before we get
back to the basics,
the water features and the.
Yeah, I don't think we should move more towards collaboration, because I think people feel like they've been collaborated to death. I think we should make some decisions within perhaps workshops or something of that nature, and then make it transparent to the community as to how we came to that decision. I'm speaking more in relation to the Batlow Library, which isn't in this listing, but there's certainly a stage of development of expectations, and we need to ask people to recognise where that started from and what is the expectation for the $1 million, and that might be the case with quite a number of these. And we need to be very transparent about the decisions we're making and how we're perhaps not meeting the now expectations of the community.
Yes, it's a collaboration, consultation overload.
Yes.
Perhaps. Thank you.
Need out of committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Marta. All in favour? Carried. Put the motion, the original motion. Councillor Marta. All in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Yeah, it's in there. Thank you. 10.1, bond reserve. Councillor Ham and Councillor Wright. Councillor Ham.
I'm so glad Councillor Wright's going to add his bit. I'd like to draw your attention to attachment 10.1. It's the Upper Murray 2030 Great River Road Vision Plan, which will show you where Bridge and Bond is.
Yes.
And so that it is in our council area, but with the river plan, they have been lobbying and successfully got interpreted sculpture, which is going to be down there. So it's right on the border of.
Only just in our council area.
It is just in our council
the river.
Yes.
On the Murray River. Beautiful, beautiful place.
And we've got a bulletproof dummy there.
And a bulletproof dummy. Thank you. And so this council has always been maintaining it historically, and this recommendation is to have that formalised.
Formalised.
Yeah. But I think it just ties in nicely to something that council needs to be aware of. This is river plan because it does affect our council, and they've been working so hard down there. People like Joe McKinnon pushing that this area looks good, has a lot of tourist influx coming into it, and we are benefiting greatly with it down there, particularly at Canco.
Councillor Wright, anything further to add?
No, I think it's great too. It's a beautiful area. A lot of people camp there, and one of the free camp areas a lot of people go to. And we maintain it, so we might as well be formally ours.
So there's no additional financial commitment to council for this?
Not that I can see in the report.
I think not, because they've always maintained it anyway.
I think it's just formalised what we already have.
Put the motion. Carried. Cancoban General Store. Councillor Ham, Councillor Larder. Councillor Ham.
People will be aware that we did purchase the Cancoban store, and if anyone's gone down to Cancoban recently and you go into the shopping centre at the moment, it's quite an eyesore. It's just a sad, large shop or empty. So the thought that this is now going to be leased by Snowy Hydro, and they're going to have a discovery centre in there at this stage, is just to be supported completely. The hall at the moment has got asbestos problems and may be demolished, and so part of that shop behind it could be used as a temporary hall. That would be very much appreciated by the community. The community have been working very hard. They've just done an amazing mural down there, which I encourage everyone to go and have a look at down there. One thing that does concern me is the bathrooms in this centre, in this shopping complex, seem to be really, really aged, and I'm just wondering if anything is being done about that.
Now that the bathrooms are on, I think we should move them forward as quickly as we can to get something done. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree that the mural is fantastic, and once again I agree that it's great to get somebody into this shop front.
Yeah.
Mr Mayor, is there any suggestion that from Snowy Hydro with their display there that they would be having utilities for community, like toilets provided in there? Could we ask them to do so?
From what I've heard, it's on the contrary, they're not going to move in until the toilets are done by us.
Yeah, the toilets need to be done by us.
Yeah.
We've got 80,000. I notify this.
A lick of paint does a lot.
Look, I think once this report goes through, I'm sure that things will start to move on the toilet front.
Councillor Ham asked if there was funding, I think, for the toilets, but did we? Is there?
Yes, I believe there is, and that's as the Mayor's described through you, Mr Mayor. The part of the Camp Coburn upgrades to the streetscape there is to improve the toilets, and it's the funding from, well, the Snowy Hydro will be contributing to fitting out their own visitor centre, and then council will use its remaining funds to fit out some community space, just as per the diagram in the report, which is just a rudimentary, indication of how it will be used. This report is to make sure that that direction is backed by council, so we continue on and plan out those projects.
Okay. Councillor.
Could we, I don't know what's involved, but could we maybe get a report on whether it's feasible to put Wi-Fi and, USB things in the PowerPoints and all that sort of stuff in that community room, so that, it's a usable space rather than something that's just going to collect dust?
I think we can Snowy Hydro to put the Wi-Fi in.
Something we can look at, but I'm sure we can look at that. So.
And sorry, Phil, when it's got that picture there of Snowy Hydro Visitor Centre and then the community space, is there any way that community space could go all the way back so there is a hall?
It can be. We're just doing the designs at the moment, pending this resolution, if this resolution proceeds, and it'll be just constrained by the budget, how much we've got left over to spend on there. So try and make it as big and usable as possible, and all of those other things that were mentioned before by Councillor Lada around Wi-Fi and things like that. We're certainly having conversations around what equipment and provisions are going to be put into it.
And heating will be pretty important.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, got the recommendations there. Nothing further? All in favour? Carried. Thank you for that. Operational plan 6 months review 10.3. Councillor Benjamin's leaving the room.
See ya.
Move Councillor Lada, second Councillor Wright. Councillor Lada. And there is an addendum as well. Thank you, Stone.
Yeah, nothing really to add.
Nothing to add? Any comment?
It's just great. Yes. Great to see so much green.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question about some of the red.
Yeah. Councillor Gissman?
Still catching up to the green and red.
Oh.
It's all right. Yeah. I might be in the wrong addendum.
So could I just ask about, I saw a press release the other day about the land in Tumbarumba being made available for more aged care units.
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
Yes, settlement took place, through Mr Mayor, settlement took place 2 weeks ago on 2 subdivided blocks as a purchase from the, I'm sorry, I can't remember the official name of the healthcare service, but it's officially essentially the Tumbarumba Hospital, and that will be then used to as the basis for a business case to go up to the next budget around the construction of 2 further independent living units.
Okay, so that can't start at least until the next financial year.
That's correct. There's no budget available at this stage.
But we do have land to put it on now.
Yeah.
And there was a business case once done on that, wasn't it?
I believe so, but several years ago, and it's worthwhile from a recommendation from officers' point of view is to make sure we update those figures, and the costs are going to be different, so that all feeds into the business case.
That's exciting. It's great.
Mr Mayor, I found the red piece I wanted. 2021, Program Strategy 1819, 119, implement CBD parking strategy across Novo's council is not progressing, I note. I also note we've been given the background on this. In September 17, there was a resolution that emphasis on parking contributions being made. But in February 19, there was certain conversations went on then, and then as recently as October 2017, we were delivered a report on car parking within the CBD of Tumut and across Snowy Valleys Council. And I'm just questioning why this particular issue is not resolved by the motions that we have carried in the past about removing the incredibly difficult requirements for investors in relation to parking within business developments, and we've lost so many investors, particularly in Tumut, in relation to this matter. So I'm questioning why is it not progressing?
Yeah.
Look, I think that's probably needs to be taken on notice, that one, and hopefully the director can get back to us by the next meeting, or if not earlier. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That would be
because there certainly is some confusion. I was confused. Don't mind saying that, because my original intention wasn't fulfilled.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. I think that the heartfelt intention was to remove, and I understand that.
Yeah. Our recommendation showed that, didn't it?
Yeah, the report that we were given perhaps did not give us sufficient information that there would be an alternative position to be taken by directors if we didn't actually give them direction in that area. So we desperately need to pay attention to this.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take that. Thank you.
Could I just...
yes.
So, on another point, 1.67, that was CCT, TVs. And I noticed that that there's now a program being rolled out, a $5 million program for CCTV cameras. And just wondering if we're applying for that. At the moment, all of them seem to be city places, but...
I'll have to take that on notice.
Yeah, and look, I think
about that.
Yeah, we've had lots of approaches regarding CCTV. I certainly see the value in it, and I think a lot of the community do. We've got the $75,000 for the crime prevention officer, and I'd say one of their main roles will be to apply for funding for that. Anyone?
If I could, the last one. The sister city arrangement, I had no idea we had a sister city.
Morris, Illinois.
I can read, but I have no idea. What sort of financial commitment does that make to have a sister city? Do we have you go over there once a year on a visit or something like that?
I'm regularly in Illinois, yes. No, not at all. You've been to Illinois? Anyhow.
My question, exactly.
Yeah. Certainly, you know, our forefathers who chose Morris, Illinois, obviously had a reason for it. South of France might have been more to my liking, but that's not the way it was. But anyhow, look, it's been sitting idle for a long time, so it may be time for something to be resurrected or changed.
Would Yes, ma'am. We have a sister city relationship in China, in northern Liaoning province, a city called Beining, that we went across with Jean Van Zeller and the Riverina Regional Development Board. And we signed a sister city relationship along with the city council. It's not been pursued, but the advantage to that part of the world was it had a matching climate to our house. They grow similar crops that we had hoped that it would develop a marketing opportunity for our producers. It's never been pursued, but I think it's something we could perhaps reactivate. But it would need a letter, I think, to the Chinese embassy here to see if they could make some progress in it if we decided that way. The place has been renamed, but I can get more details to it at a later meeting. But I think it's, I mean, that's where I had hoped to get an exchange going so that the local kids here could learn the language, learn the customs, and help develop businesses here. I mean, I've felt for years that it was that our apple industry would be better and served if they sold all our apples all at once to a mate over in that part of the world where China or Japan doesn't matter much, and we reciprocate in the other season rather than store things, because the stored apples don't taste as good as the fresh ones. Anyway, that's just one small thing. But I really think we should pursue it. It's just a matter of cost, but I think Rotary could be perhaps climbed into.
And we actually have to I mean, we're not the same. These are different councils.
These are different councils.
We can have a new
whatever we
new sister over in Norway.
We can't. We can't. But we silly to waste what we've done.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Look, I'm sure we've got more pressing priorities, but if there's an opportunity, we'll move that way. Have a move and a second for that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have. Councillor Larder and Councillor Wright. Councillor Larder, did you want to close the debate, or have we had enough? Put the motion, all in favour? Carried.
Can someone do that, Gary?
We'll move on to management reports. 10.4, planning proposal Tumut LEP 2012 amendment number 4. Councillor Benjamin, just let you know that those two recommendations were accepted.
Thank you. Should we have tabled
I do reference it and they'll be published on the web.
So I've got 3 recommendations there. Do I have a mover? Councillor Wright. Councillor Cross.
Can we move into committee?
Certainly. Councillor Larder.
Can I have a page reference, please, Mr Mayor?
95. 98 on the computer.
96 on mine. In the 90s.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Late 90s. Do I have a second then? For moving committee? Councillor Benjamin, thank you. We're in committee. Councillor Larder.
I just want some clarification on some of these matters here with regard to the zoning. Why is it that we need to make the lot so small? It seems to me that 600 metres squared, I mean that would be a small size block in Liverpool, in Sydney, and we're in the country. It seems a bit silly to me to be doing that, and it worries me a little bit about the capacity and what it does to the housing sector and market. When you haven't got all the uptake on the existing blocks. There's a lot to consider here. I just worry that we're sort of. I worry these are too small. I just don't think that that's in keeping with the amenity of a regional town of our size. That you should be putting things on a 600 metre squared block kilometres out of town. It just doesn't sort of sit comfortably with me. There's obviously a number of concerns from surrounding residents with regard to stormwater and the like, and then there's obviously the impact of this decision on what that does to the, you know, the real estate market locally. And there's all the issues about, you know, it's all right in Liverpool when you've got a bus service and you're picking up old people that are buying, you know, kilometres out of town, and but, you know, we don't have that luxury. So, you know, we've got to be able to get their gopher into town, and, you know, it's not as simple as it looks on paper. And perhaps when we consider these, I don't know what the legality is, but, you know, when we consider these things, I think it's good for us to actually do a site visit. I don't know whether we're allowed, and just, you know, go out there and have a look for ourselves at what's been, you know, earmarked, because, you know, it's very difficult to visualise here for those that aren't familiar with it.
Might go to Councillor Pritchard, then to Director Stone.
I agree that we should have a look at it and think about it, but as I've got older, the size of a desirable block in my mind's got much smaller. In fact, we've moved into a small unit, a small block in town, and it's remarkably convenient. You've got less maintenance to do in the yard and whatever, and your neighbours, you've still got separate title, and you're close to your neighbours, but not too close. And if you have any problems with all the break-ins and things that are on nowadays, it's nice to have your neighbours within shouting distance. And we have to consider that we need to. There's not that much flat land around Tumut. We've not that much. We don't have long-term future options for more housing. So I think having a small box is more sensible. I mean, we don't even have a proper footpath along the highway. We see people walking out, pushing their prams and the gophers along the Surrey Mountains Highway, but we don't have footpaths. But so all our services should be more compact, I think, and particularly this. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to go off what Councillor Lada was saying. I know most of the people in the Valley View estate, and through their latest stage, there is a lot of complaint as to why the lands were made so much smaller. Now, most of those lands are 600 to 700 square metres, and they're not liking it. They prefer to go with the stage one, which was 900 to 1,000. So a lot of the younger generation are buying into these lands, and they're finding that they are a little bit too small for their families to grow into. Okay for the older generation to go the smaller, but for the younger generations that are investing in these estates, they're wanting to have that 800 to 1,000 square metre block, so that way their family can grow and they can have proper sized backyards instead of having something so compact and small. That's all.
Just to really address that is that you can have more parkland and the kids can go and play and have a kick a ball around. I think the days of the kids going out in the backyard and having backyard cricket are gone. You know, they're playing with these things all the time.
Councillor Smith.
Another comment would be that the blocks are in an area that is semi-rural. It would seem a little bit senseless to have very small blocks in a semi-rural area.
Mr. Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, these aren't areas identified within this plan that are there if someone wants to come in and subdivide and make a development. They're not already planned and surveyed as that. So I believe the size of block that's the smallest they can be. A developer could come in and buy the whole lot and build one house on the whole lot if they really wanted to. So I don't believe, I might be mistaken, but I think that this plan was started in 2013. It's been ongoing for a long time. It also includes the rezoning of the area of Batlow to the full multi-mixed area. So I'd be careful in rejecting this plan and not taking it on board, because it's something that's been in development for a long, long time. And if I am correct, and it's to do with redevelopment, someone purchasing the land and then developing it as an investment, then we are only nominating that that's the smallest size block that can go in that development.
Yeah. And they do have houses on them, these blocks. just giving him the opportunity to rezone.
Yeah.
That to me is the worry, because if I own a block of land and I want to develop it, you obviously want to do it and make the most financial gain out of it. So they are going to, in my view, they are going to make these blocks 600. Why wouldn't you?
Get more money.
Although they won't sell them so easily, get the 600 if people don't want them, they want 1,000.
So there's an estate down at down near the high school that there's still, I don't know, probably 15 blocks of land still sitting there. Not one of them's been sold.
No, they're 10 years old.
That's
Not one.
very steep slope, isn't it? So there are other issues.
This is probably the issue we need to concentrate on.
Mm.
So, I was coming back to you, wasn't I?
Eventually, Mr Mayor, when this is Council's meeting, it's important that councillors understand that this is the final part of a process that has been ongoing for some time. But it doesn't just end there. It is to rezone land that allows for lots to be as small as 600 square metres, but it doesn't mean they have to be 600 square metres. And the lot size that is decided upon via the subdivision process, which is a new process following this. So of course if council doesn't make the amendment and complete it, they can't proceed any further. But this is proposing to rezone the land for the purposes of someone being able to subdivide via a DA. And the lot size is a combination of not only the zoning of the land, but also the topography of the land, the likely target market for residential housing, and how all those other issues such as stormwater and parks and reserves, etc., will interact. So the response in the report by the planning officer says that they've seen an indicative layout. It's not the final layout, it's just an indicative layout as to how the lots will be laid out in a future subdivision. And he didn't have any concerns from a planning point of view. So my response in short for that is that not every lot will be 600 square metres, and it's generally not practical to have that. And developers always like to try and get a good balance between marketability, and in a rural area like this, people do want a reasonably bit of space between houses, but also lot yield, so they can get as many lots as possible, allowing for other infrastructure. So the next stage will determine the average size of the lots, and that's where council can get interested and involved with the layout and have some comment, if they so choose, on how that subdivision is designed. In response to the question around councillors going to visit the sites, from an officer's point of view, I'd recommend all councillors go and visit developments to get appraised of the land and walk around. It's certainly within your bailiwick and responsibility to inform yourselves as to the land.
Thank you. Councillor Larder.
So why is this before us today? Is it because of legislation, or has somebody asked for this development to happen?
I believe somebody's asked for it to happen, so it's a private interest and that can be done. But you have to go through this process via the legislation.
Yeah.
So this is the final report to council to consider the submissions that are required to be called for by the members of the public. And so it essentially focuses on what are the concerns that surrounding property owners have. And essentially they're twofold. One is the lot size and the other is the stormwater. So there's a recommendation made by the planner which is appropriate to investigate the stormwater form and function and design coming from Valley View's estate to ensure that it doesn't exacerbate any issues that are there. We think it's an appropriate thing for council to investigate to make sure it's been designed correctly and that it's forming well, and it may be some mitigation works need to be conducted, and that's point 2 of the recommendation.
So under this recommendation, can we change that lot size? Can we?
Well, that's the lot size that is the minimum lot size for the zone. So it'd have to be a different zone to change the lot size.
So essentially what you're saying is if we approve this today, then they can basically put up a 600 lot plan, and under planning purposes, unless there's a good reason, we couldn't knock it back.
Well, there would have to be notification again. It's a new DA. And actually a DA. So that's another process that a developer has to go through and go into much more detail on the reasons why they've chosen that lot layout, and especially the average lot size and so forth. And that's where council can get quite prescriptive and put conditions on the DA that dictate certain things such as form and function of the overall layout, and that will form that will go towards determining the average lot size. This is simply, the zone allows for lots to be as small as 600 square metres, but it's never, in practical purposes, every lot will be 600 square metres.
So of the Knott Valley view, how many of those were 600?
I couldn't give you that information.
It's about 80% of the stage 3.
So this really is an in principle resolution that we're being asked to do.
This resolution gives effect to the rezoning of the land,
Yes.
which changes its category, if you like,
Yeah.
which allows you to do different things to it than what you could possibly previously do.
Yeah.
But any developer still has to go through a DA process to get a subdivision underway, and that's where council can get involved again and in more detail.
And zoning is, of course, a regulation imposed on us. When whatever the zoning is, it's imposed. Whatever the zoning
That's right.
regulation is.
So what's the zoning now? What's the lot size that they can have now?
It's currently R5 large lot residential, which is a minimum lot size of 5,000 square metres, so over an acre.
And how many, what's the average size of these blocks now?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. I don't have that information in front of me. But the provision in the zone is 5,000 square metres as a minimum lot size, and that's reducing to a much denser residential type zone, and obviously the minimum lot size is 600 square metres.
Have we exhausted all the questions? Can we move out of
Ready? Don't think we're ready.
Councillor Benjamin? Councillor Lyle? All in favour? Carried. Okay, we're out of committee. This is a planning matter as well. We've got 3 recommendations there. We've got a move and a second. We've moved and seconded. It's already done. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Hand up, please. Against? So we've got 2 recorded against. Benjamin and Lara. Thank you very much, councillors. You can put your hand down there. You get the idea.
Well, I mean, it's hard to, we haven't seen it. So I don't know how we can make a decision.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Lada as well.
Moving on to the Adelong Floodplain Risk Management Study and Draft Plan, 10.5. 3 recommendations there. This has been a long process to get this floodplain risk management study up and running, and I'll point you to recommendation 3, which is stage 3 grant funding, which means we can, once we've got the plan, we can start to do something on the ground, even though it's nearly 9 years since the, or 8 years since the flood. 2010 and 2012. Do I have a mover for those? Councillor Ham. Second to Councillor Cross.
101.
Well, you'd know it a lot better than me, but I certainly remember the flood in 2011.
2010.
10. Driving through Adelong, it was quite something.
Well, it's water views.
Water views. New pool came out of it.
Yeah, new pool. There's sort of serendipity. Yeah.
Yes, so 9 years later, it would be good to have something happen.
Yeah, it would.
This is an intensely in-depth risk management study that's gone on and been supplied for. It's incredible. I've never seen so many maps of Adelong with so many coloured drawings on it. And it would have been nice to have had a simpler overview at the start, but it's a very good plan, and thank you for getting it at last.
Adelong is a very complex town.
I know. And it's in there's a loop of water as well.
We take things very seriously.
By all those maps, Lynn Street has never, Selwyn Street's never been inundated either, I noticed.
So I've got move and a second there. Any further comment? Put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Junction Street Mingery. 3 recommendations there. Councillor Han. Wait for a second. Councillor Wright. Councillor Han.
I'd like to move all 4 recommendations, and why the people may be disappointed that not to proceed with the request to seal Junction Street at this time. Having lived on a farm with the dust suppression seal in front of it, it really does make a big difference, and if council can come to some agreements with the owners of these properties to get a dust suppression, because I don't think we've got the funds to seal the whole of Junction Street.
There's lots of other streets need doing, roads need doing.
Yeah, like the Lower Vega.
Conflict of interest there, Councillor Han.
Conflict of interest. Just repeat.
Thank you, Councillor Han, for those comments. Any speakers against?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I would. Not against the resolve, but against the idea that we would consider other people's requests for funding, because we've got lots of roads as being stated, but there's a road in Batlow Forest Road that's been Foster Road, sorry, that's been waiting for something like 4 years for flood run funding to come through. So I think we need to be careful that when people build their homes next to dirt roads, we don't suddenly become the person the council that has to adjust their dust problems when the dust was there before they even built. So we need to be careful that we're looking at things for the right reason.
I'm sure council will take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll put this motion. All in favour? Carried. .7 Service Review Project Final Report. A small change there in recommendation 2, where Service Review Project in 2. The collation. Correct. Do I have a mover?
Didn't we have consideration?
Would you like to move something, Councillor Cross?
Number 2, if we're incorporating the findings into the integrated planning and reporting system, that locks us into doing all of those things. So shouldn't it be that we consider?
Certainly. You want to
consider
change?
Incorporating the findings?
Would you like to move that way?
I would like to move that way, because then that gives us the flexibility to respond to other things.
Okay. Just wait a minute, take it up. So, you
just don't consider
Thank you, Councillor Cross. So, Councillor Cross is moving that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ham, thank you. Councillor Cross, over to you.
I'm happy with that. I think that gives us flexibility, but it also gives that inclusivity as well.
And happy with the report as well? Thank you.
I think the whole process, the report, the sounding board, the feedback I've got from the community, the way the priorities are just set out there very strongly in front of you, it gives us as councillors just a lot of guidance to how we're to manage in the next number of years to come.
Yeah. Look, I was really impressed with the budget allocated. I would have preferred that more people had taken up the opportunity to use it, but maybe they did and didn't click the final button. But certainly that was a very good tool. Okay, so we've got those recommendations there. Put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. 11.1. Tumut Youth Council Committee. We had some changes there, I believe. Councillor
Yes,
Cross.
Councillor, Mr Mayor, we actually got in our papers the Tumbarumba strategic plan, not the Tumut strategic plan, so we need to take that recommendation out.
So delete number 2?
Yes.
So number 3 becomes 2?
Yes. And in numbers, when that becomes the second one, that council accept the Tumut Youth Council's new logo, then we need to add something there about it being included as part of the Snowy Valley Council lock-up procedures.
Donna, what was the name of that? Is it lock-up logo?
Lock-up logo. Lock-up logo, yes.
As long as they're not locking the youth council up, I'm happy. I think we're doing a lot of good.
Through Mr Mayor, suggest additional wording follow number 2, comma, including, with the inclusion of council's lock-up logo.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a mover for Councillor Cross. Did I have a seconder for that? Councillor Wright, thank you. Any further comment?
I think it should be noted that the Youth Council, we had at our last meeting, we had a discussion around what they felt their purpose was, and that they would really like to become much more in line with how council works. And one of the things that I would like to recommend to them is that they actually meet in our meeting room to make it a much more formal meeting procedure for them to start to practice and get used to. The terms of, well, I won't go into that one. The other thing was that at the last meeting, if I can bring this up, there was a concern that they didn't feel that they were being consulted on issues that were to do with them, particularly around the Tumut pump track. I did discuss it with our mayor, and he told me or informed me that it was a matter of timing. So I'll be taking that information back to the Youth Council to let them know that, of course, they will be consulted, but that at this stage it was a matter of getting the funding through quickly. And one of the things that we could possibly recommend is that they have a visit to the Tumbarumba pump track to see exactly what it looks like, so that they can see what's going to happen for the Tumut area.
And I'd certainly endorse that if these rooms are available when they're meeting, I'd certainly endorse that they meet here and follow proper meeting procedures.
We actually met in this room because the other building wasn't available downstairs, and it actually had a huge impact on their behaviour. It was really quite incredible to see. So I thought then that would be a really good opportunity for them.
Terrific. Nothing further. So there's two recommendations there.
I'd just like to say, if they Tumut are coming to Tumbarumba to visit their pump track, we should make sure we've got the Tumbarumba branch of the Youth Council along with them, so that they can maybe a little bit more interaction.
Excellent idea. I'll put it to the next meeting.
Yep.
And get back to you.
Thank you, councillors. Motion all in favour? Carried. Thank you. 11.2 minutes of Batley Development League meeting. Councillor Smith. Councillor Cross, can I make a suggestion to you both that we look at 2B and we replace 2B with full review of section 355 committees by the end of the year.
In the terms of reference?
Yep.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
Yes.
Do you move that way, or do you want me to move it up?
Yes.
If through the chair, if I may, I just wanted to expand on that a little bit further and explain that I think there's been a lot of work done by Section 355 committees and staff of council to review the terms of reference for all of those committees. And one of the difficulties I think that's been identified is that our committees all perform quite different functions. Although they're performing functions of council, they have different focus. And so as a result, I think bringing together consistent terms of reference across all of those groups has identified some challenges and some variations that we need to do a little bit more work on. So that's perhaps the explanation that sits behind. It's not that the terms of reference are wrong, it's just that they need to be, I think, tailored a little bit more to specific committees.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think some adjustments do need to be made to the terms of reference in this particular case, but I think we need further study before we can accept the terms of reference as has been suggested by the BDL. So rather than say that we will accept them at this time, there should be some reference to giving us time to look at this particular set of terms of reference.
So the end of the year suits?
Yeah.
Councillor Lane.
I'd just add too that, you know, with regard to some of these committees, such as the Montreal Theatre, you know, like that probably in terms of what we...
Mr. Mayor, can we move into committee?
Councillor Risserman.
Yes.
Councillor Cross, all in favour? Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Risserman.
Just in terms...
The floor is yours, Councillor.
Just in terms of...
5 minutes.
Starting from now.
Just in terms of these committees, you know, obviously as a council body, you know, the governance of them were responsible. You know, so in relation to some of these 355s, or whatever the situation may be with them, like the Montreal Theatre, it's probably one of council's biggest assets. But we don't have any insight into what happens with regard to that risk. And you know, the perfect example there might be from a governance point of view is, you know, there's obviously issues around the fire escape and all those issues at the back of the building. Now, if there's an issue there, then and somebody gets injured, then you know, they're the sort of things that as a council we need to be informed about to make decisions that are, you know, in the best interests of, you know, the organisation. And I don't think that we can do that without the information. So there needs to be, you know, greater transparency with what's going on for things that we're responsible for.
Yeah, I understand, especially infrastructure and real estate.
So we own Montreal Theatre, but we don't manage, we don't have, I'm just asking clarification.
No, we don't.
We don't have anything to do with what they modify or change? Or?
Well, we'd have to go through, I think, for example, the new roof went through council and the Heritage Office.
Right.
But we don't have any control of what goes on. So say, for instance, there was a grant to paint the place, but, you know, somebody from out of town came and painted it. You know, they're the sort of things that, you know, as a council, and, you know, in regards to managing risk and making sure that people are employed locally, they're the sort of things we need to be on top of, because, you know, we don't want people from Wollongong painting our stuff.
Our people out of work.
Yeah.
And you were saying about fire risk and fire exits, and that can be pretty horrendous if you look at fires in other countries, particularly, not so much.
There's no disabled access there. You know.
Yeah, well, is that going to be our cost, or
well, I think it's a risk. It's a risk.
There are issues in relation to, as we just said, all the 355 committees in relation to their finances. Some groups, I'm just noting here, we were discussing the Batlow Development League minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm noting here that they have suggested in their minutes from 5th of December 18 that the Batlow Literary Group be able to allocate funds they have raised to worthwhile local community groups. But we've got no idea what those funds are.
Well, I can answer that question. The Batlow Literary Group no longer functions. It's now been disbanded, and there were some funds left over from their own funds that they generated. They were not council funds, but they were funds through their little group, which they felt they should be able to actually determine what happens to them rather than the BDL determining what happens to those funds.
Thank you. I agree with what you're saying there, Councillor Smith, but it brings me to the point of, first of all, as a 355 committee of Batlow Development League, we aren't informed of what these subcommittees that these 355 committees set up, and we don't necessarily receive up-to-date minutes from some of them. I mean, not necessarily the literary group, but I mean, it isn't up to us to decide who they're going to give their funds to. If they're part of the 355 committee.
So can I get a clarification? The Batlow Literary Group are a subgroup of the Batlow Development League, who are a 355 committee of council.
Yes.
So.
And they've put in their minutes here that they wanted us to say that the literary group could give their funds away. Why?
You can't.
Because they have ceased operation.
But it doesn't matter.
They're council funds, technically, aren't they?
The Batlow Committee of Council. You
Yeah,
can't get away from
council.
that. It's all very well to say 355 committees. They're committees of council. The council has the full responsibility for all the money. They can't gain money in their own right. They can't spend money in their own right. They're committees of council.
But we don't know.
I think we've got a responsibility to help these organisations, but not to be their mother. I think in the free enterprise world, they should stand on their own feet. The Gilmore Valley one is a prime example of an independent, robust committee. It's a community committee, a geographic committee. The Adelaide Progress Association, I think, is not a 355 committee.
No, they're incorporated.
Yeah, they're incorporated. Yep. A private incorporated with the Department of Fair Trading, and so is the Tumut Community Association.
So is the Adelaide Community Enterprises.
Yeah, and I think that I know of examples from other towns where there've been committees that have raised money and they've got bank accounts here and there and everywhere else, and it's all going to blow up in their faces sooner or later. And I think we need a uniform thing across the Shire. But by so many of these committees, there's a tremendous load on the staff to service them. I think the staff could help. We could help them.
I think there's a lack of understanding of some of the committees who are 355 committees of what a 355 committee means,
yes.
and what they, what the implications are for them. They're basically they are a committee of council. They're an instrument of council. So we have responsibility for them.
To incorporate it as as an independent body with the Department of Fair Trading, it's less than $200 by register the name. They have to.
It's the insurance council
is
the issue.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, may I suggest if we're going to not allow these people to determine where those funds are to be donated, then we probably council should write to the BDL making that clear.
I think if they would like to give their funds away, which is fine, they put it in a recommendation. The recommendation comes to us and we approve it. Yeah. That's how it works.
So can we write to them and make that suggestion?
It should be pretty clear in our recommendation. We can change this recommendation.
It is quite possible that those funds have already been dispersed, by the way.
Well, it's a possibility. Thank you. So, would you like to move back into committee? Yeah. Out of committee? Back into Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Cross, all in favour? Moving back. So, do we have any amendments there? So, I think we need an amendment to A then?
Yes.
So it needs to be that the Batlow Literary Group make a recommendation to council to allocate funds.
Yep.
Okay.
Are they funds that they've raised or inherited?
Yeah, they're funds that they've raised.
They've raised.
And B needs to be amended
Yep. So that's where we were talking about a full review of section 355 committees.
That's correct.
That's correct. So
So-
we've got changes there.
That goes completely.
So we could remove that, or we could note defer accepting. Yeah, defer accepting to amended terms of reference.
Pending a review of all.
Hold on, there's one more. Review of all
terms of references. The 355 committees.
For section.
Mood music.
Who's in the elevator?
Get rid of the rest of
Get
this.
rid of the rest of them. That's it.
Press button.
But we should.
We should
We should approve that.
Well, we should do it. Okay, so we've got A's been amended, B has been amended to defer acceptance of the terms of reference. Defer acceptance of the
Yeah, the amended terms.
terms of reference pending review of
Take
terms
out
of
the,
355 committees. Do we want to say by the end of the
Yes, by
calendar year?
Yes.
take
by
out the
in
second
December.
the.
By December. And then we copy that to go in all the next two.
Defer acceptance of the amended.
Down at the end, by December 28.
Thank you. And then three is okay. Okay. So Councillor Smith and Councillor Cross, you're happy with those
Yes.
amendments? Thank you. Any further? Put the motion, all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Brings us to 11.3 minutes of the Talbingo Progress and Ratepayers Association meeting on the 7th of November.
Move we accept the report.
Move that. Seconder? Councillor Hand. Adopt the minutes of the... Number two's got a... should be Talbingo.
Yes, sort of tabling.
Tabling. Auto spell probably didn't need. E, any comment?
They bring up the terms of reference as well. I'm just wondering if we send out an email to all section 355 and just say, yes.
Put the motion, all in favour? Carried. Takes us to 11.4, their 5th of December meeting with Talbingo Progress Association. There's two recommendations there. Note that 2B, Council resolve a solution to the provision of accessible toilet facilities for Talbingo library users. We'll be doing something along those lines. Yeah, look, I'll ask Director Harvey.
Yes, I can expand on that request from the Talbingo Progress and Ratepayers Association, and just to give some context to what that request is about. The library in Talbingo is situated within the public school of Talbingo. It's a shared library between the school and the community, and due to legislative changes within the Department of Education, the use of toilets within schools is restricted only to children, and adults are prohibited from using toilets. So this impacts on the Talbingo library users in regard to that. So where they could use the toilets before, they now can't. There is a toilet located, or public toilets located, within 200 metres of the library. We have explored with the committee various options around what this means. Obviously the impact is being felt by the library users, but we have a difficulty in terms of the fact that the library is on New South Wales education land, and there are no requirements in the Libraries Act to actually provide toilets for library and for library users. But the community are really keen for a solution to be found. What we're doing at the moment is we've arranged a meeting with New South Wales Education and involving our library staff, and myself and Councillor Cross will attend that meeting as well to try and look for some options. But it's not likely that council would be in a position to actually build a toilet block on education land. So I suppose this is still a work in progress, but the committee were very keen to try and get some resolution and to get a decision from council about this matter, which is why it's on the agenda.
Question, Mr. Mayor. I believe that Talbingo Library is open 1 day a week, and I also know that Batley Technology School has been actively promoting use of facilities at the school after hours, such as their art room and their technology room and other services, their library, their IT equipment. So there must be an opportunity here to possibly negotiate with the Department of Education to have the library open after school hours, instead of 1 day, perhaps 2 days, 2 short periods after school hours, because the Department of Education is definitely asking for the community to use the education facilities after hours.
Yep. Exactly.
It might be reasonable to open the library on a Saturday.
The cost.
If I might just add, Batley Technology School, of course, is a kindergarten to year 12, so it's not just that Talbingo's primary school, it's obviously, that's part of the Batley Technology School environment as well, so after school hours seems to work admirably.
Councillor Ryder.
Is there no opportunity to modernise this toilet so that, you know, it's back to back, or?
The issue is that they have to actually go through school premises to access the toilets as well, and the notice has been put up that the public are no longer able to enter the school premises through that door and to walk through school premises.
Anyhow, we'll look at options.
Refer that to the meeting.
Yep. Thank you.
This is political correctness gone bloody mad, isn't it? You know, you won't be able to go to the toilet at Coles next.
Where does the teacher go?
We'll find some options. Thank you. We've got the recommendations there. Put the recommendations. All in favour? Thank you, Councillor Ryder.
Oh, man.
Okay. Moving on. We're up to 11.5, Tumblefest. Now, coming up, we've had some issues about the terms of reference. So if we can put those 3 recommendations, 1, 2, and 3,
Yes.
and can I have a mover for those? Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross, and leave out 4. Councillor Ham.
Well, it's on this weekend. It's going to be absolutely fabulous. There's lots of great music, lots of wine to taste. What sort of food is there?
Anything you think of?
And there's actually 91 market stalls there, all different ones, including Snowy Hydro, including Snowy Valleys Council, Landcare, as well as ones where you can buy things. So encourage you all to come along. There's been a big emphasis this year put on children's activities, and so children under 12 are free, and they can pay for rides, but there's photo booths, there's face painting, and there's Cameron White doing spins on his bike, on his BMX bike, on a big ramp. So if you're bringing children under the age of 12, that's free, and there should be enough to do without having to pay for extra rides. But highly recommend it, and it's a tremendous weekend.
Thank you. Put the motion. All in favour? Carried. 11.6, Tumbarumba Men's Shed meeting. 2 recommendations there. Do I have a mover? Councillor Wright, Councillor Risselman. Comment, Councillor Wright?
I've got nothing for that.
Put the motion, all in favour? Carried.
Do you go to those, Bruce?
No, I haven't been to that one. You know, probably shouldn't.
Which takes us to 11.7, and I ask that we have a mover to defer 11.7 through to 11.12.
Moved.
Councillor Larder, Councillor Bisselman, until we get the terms of reference sorted out. Councillor Larder, anything?
Yeah, no, correct.
Put the motion, all in favour? Carried. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the ordinary section of the business paper, and now move into confidential. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks for the hearing.
Thank you very much. We've moved out of confidential. I'll ask the Acting General Manager, Director Harvey, to tell us what happened in confidential.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Resolutions from 12.1. One is receive the report on the General Manager's annual performance review. 2. Endorse the 2018-19 General Manager's performance review as the General Manager's priorities for 2019/20. 3. Align the General Manager's annual review with the operational plan and the reporting period be based on a financial year cycle. 4. Vary the General Manager's contract to include a clause relating to professional development. And 5. Amend the total remuneration in line with the provisions of the contract and the Public Service Senior Executive's annual determination under Section 240 Statutory and Other Officers Remuneration Act 1975.
Is that one?
Yep. 12.2 Tumut Caravan Park redevelopment installation of camp kitchen. The Council 1. Receive this report on the installation of the camp kitchen as part of the Tumut Caravan Park redevelopment project. 2. Acknowledge the engagement of Moxon Brothers building contractors for the installation of the camp kitchen for the price of $88,800.91 excluding GST as a select procurement due to the specialist nature of this work. And 3. Note this engagement does not comply with the Snowy Valleys Council procurement procedure, which requires that 3 formal quotes are obtained for works between $50,001 and $149,999. Item 12.3 RFT 2018-17 Panel of Suppliers Tender Provision of Guardrail, Line Marking and Traffic Control. Resolve that Council 1. Receive this report on the outcomes for the request for tender RFT 2018/17 for the panel of preferred suppliers for the supply of services as detailed in this report. 2. Resolve in accordance with Section 55 of the New South Wales Local Government Act 1993 to accept the panel of suppliers for the supply of services as recommended by the evaluation panel and detailed in Table 4 of this report. 3. Authorise the General Manager to enter into contracts with the companies recommended for the preferred panel of suppliers for the supply of services as summarised in Item 2 above. 4. Authorise the General Manager to amend the order of the preferred supplier panel for the supply of services as referred to in Item 2 above through other procurement arrangements if the preferred suppliers fail to provide value for money for Council or comply with the statement of requirements or conditions of contract for the supply of services. 5. Authorise the General Manager to exercise the 1-year extension option for the supply of services contract subject to the satisfactory performance of the contract. And 6. Note that Council officers have commenced with the early procurement of guardrail services to complete guardrail work on Go Cup Road. Then we move to late report 12.4 Tumbarumba Showground resurfacing project. Resolved that Council 1. Receive this report for the Tumbarumba Showground resurfacing project. 2. Noting Section 55 (3) (1) of the Local Government Act 1993 New South Wales resolves that because of the unavailability of competitive or reliable tenderers and as a result of certain other extenuating circumstances, a satisfactory result would not be achieved by inviting tenders for the purchase of goods and services associated with the Tumbarumba Showground resurfacing project. 3. Notes that the reasons for Council's decision that a satisfactory result would not be achieved by inviting tenders for the purchase of goods and services associated with the Tumbarumba Showground resurfacing project are that A. In September 2018, Council issued an invitation for tenders relating to the resurfacing of the Tumut Bull Paddock and Tumbarumba Sports Field, including the supply and installation of subsurface drainage and automated sprinkler systems, in brackets tender 2018/07. B, tender 2018/07 elicited no response from the market, and Council was required to enter into direct negotiations with the service provider to procure the required goods and services. C, the goods and services tendered for under tender 2018/07 are substantially similar to the goods and services that will be purchased in relation to the Tumbarumba Showground resurfacing project. D, Council considers it to be unlikely that there have been any changes in the market since September 2018 that would result in tenderers now responding to an invitation for tenders in respect of the Tumbarumba Showground resurfacing project. E, Council has significant data from the negotiation of the Tumut Bull Paddock and Tumbarumba Sports Field resurfacing projects that can be used for resurfacing and benchmarking purposes in negotiating a contract with a service provider in relation to the purchase of goods and services associated with the Tumbarumba Showground resurfacing project. F, delivering the project through a negotiated contract provides Council the opportunity to complete the project before winter 2019. This would mean that the fields would be available from spring 2019. This would deliver significant benefits to Council and community, with the fields being available for use in the spring and the timelines under the funding agreement for the project being met. Failure to meet the funding timelines could result in the funding being revoked. And fourth, authorise the General Manager to negotiate with, and subject to the successful outcome of negotiations, enter into a contract with Excel Turf Proprietary Limited for the purchase of goods and services associated with the Tumbarumba Showground resurfacing project.
Thank you. That concludes Council meeting for today. Next meeting will be next month, and this weekend is Tumberfest. See you all then. Thank you.
Thank you.